We finally made it. Oh my goodness. Guys, it's the Vegas or Bust video. Hi, if you've never seen me before, I'm Lana. I run the Honey Birdette archive here at Lana Duquesne. Honey Birdette is an Australian lingerie brand. Used to be Australian owned, it is no longer, and so I created the archive in order to hold on to these archival pieces and start looking at the history and the depth of this brand that I think was just massively overlooked. This has been such a long time coming, and I'm so excited to show you everything that I've been pouring my heart into. I never thought that a lingerie trailer could have so much depth and so much meaning, and this video could be 3 hours long if I thought that you guys would watch it, but I think that might be a little bit extreme. So we're going to go through it today. I'm going to pop in chapters as well because we're going to be doing an analysis of the trailer and the values as well as the sets themselves. If you're just curious in the beautiful lingerie and the fashion and things like that, you'll be able to just skip through the analysis stages if you would like. It's really, really interesting. So I think you should consider watching it. Vegas or Bust was released late August, early September 2016. And it's actually August, September when I've been filming and working on this. So it's quite lovely. The trailer covers 5 sets: Ashleigh, Charlotte, Scarlette, Miss V, and Cristina. My hope is to take you through each set to show you the unbelievable cultural depth and importance that this trailer specifically represents and holds still. Even if the brand isn't what it used to be, I think this is so important, and I have truly just a million reasons why. When it comes to women's history, I think this trailer has a lot more importance and impact than maybe we thought in the beginning. If you would like to watch the Vegas or Bust trailer, I will link it below. You can pause this video and then go and watch it, or I'm going to put clips up over the screen. The trailer opens and we get our first image of our pseudo Thelma and Louise in their Ashleigh sets. Now, the Ashleigh sets are amazing. There's the 3-piece where we get the bra, this beautiful skirt, suspender, and the underwear, or we have the Ashleigh dress, which I don't have in the archive, but look. It is so incredibly beautiful. Now, this beautiful garment, skirt, the whole thing put together is a reference to really, really early days, 1910s of women's lingerie. Arguably kind of the beginning of undergarments going from being just undergarments to resembling what we see as lingerie today. So the corselet or the Merry Widow was the first early creation of this sort of undergarment for women, where we started to see this full body suspender bra contraption rather than wearing a girdle and all these different sort of pieces. The corselet and the Merry Widow, as we can see in advertisements like this Warner's ad, were very, very beautiful, quite lovely, and a step in a brand new direction for women. It's incredible to have this kick off our Vegas or Bust analysis, because seeing this, and once you start to see what it compares to and where it comes from, over 110 years ago, women finally started to get what we know now as lingerie, and now we're here in 2025 talking about it, and this is where it all started. And this isn't the first time this has been done. There's lots of different fashion iterations of the Merry Widow. You can see it here in this Mugler gold number. We're looking at that really, really short skirt, the tight little top, and then that snatched waist. In these 2 Mugler examples, we can start to see how Runway adapted this shape and the corselet itself into fashionable silhouettes for women. In this 1992 Dolce & Gabbana look, you can also see this really tight skirt ending just below sort of the hip butt area. I don't really know what that's called. And then those suspenders immediately coming down. And I think it's incredible that the beginning of our video and our journey with Vegas or Bust starts with immediate reference to Thelma and Louise, and then Ashleigh, which is the very origin of lingerie. The original Ashleigh also has a zip closure rather than a bra clasp. Zips weren't invented until the 1930s, so the corselet had already been around for 20 years at that point. But I think it's really fun to see all of these points of history come together in one garment. The sheer paneling really starts to bring us into the modern day, and even the little chantilly lace, which we're going to talk about in the next section. Literally just an unboxing for the channel, which you guys will likely have already seen, where I opened the Ashleigh brief. It's not super relevant because we are going to do individual deep dives on the sets, but you did not get to see this in the video, so I really wanted to show you. Anyway, bye! A corselet also translates to a softer version of armor, which I believe these designers and Eloise at Honey Birdette saw lingerie to be for women. Now, this image of our scantily clad heroines speeding down the highway was not very common in the 2010s. Where we've come to now in the 2020s is not how things were 10 years ago. If the pendulum begun to swing in the 2010s towards this more nudity, hypersexual era that we're in now, it definitely was not. It was only just beginning when this brand was prevalent. The social pushback that Honey Birdette received really shows that. Thelma and Louise was incredibly relevant to women of the time. The idea of any open commentary about the experience of a woman was still very much taboo and seen as just sort of nonsense coming along from women. Now, I think Thelma and Louise was chosen for this campaign very specifically, and I think Thelma and Louise and Honey Birdette combined share some very, very similar values. I don't believe that a lingerie set was put onto our Thelma and Louise characters to sexualize them or to make them look sexy. I think what we're seeing is an amplification of the themes of Thelma and Louise. We immediately know these women are on the run. They're, new friends through a real tragedy, and they're kind of throwing caution to the wind and saying, let's get in our beautiful convertible and let's get out of here. Let's go somewhere else. And the addition of lingerie doesn't take away from any of that, because Thelma and Louise is such a strong cultural icon. But what it does is it amplifies those themes, specifically the themes around danger. Next, we have the Scarlette set, which I am so in love with. Those who have seen me unbox her have already seen me go through every single stage of excitement because this is one of my all-time favorites. I'll put an image of the full set here because I don't have it in the archive yet. Now, the design references for Scarlette go all the way back to 1467, when the Japanese first begun using hojujutsu for what has become now shibari, kimbaku, all of these different rope tying arts. The hishikarada, or the diamond tie, which this set references, was specifically used to exploit women by mirroring the shape of our bodies. In modern day, the hishikarada is actually one of the least bondage-related ties. It doesn't actually restrain you in any way, and it's probably the first tie that most people will learn. It's very, very easy. And I think just very trendy as well. Hi, I thought I would quickly jump in. Through all the excitement, I forgot to show you the shibari bras. As we go through the discussion about hojujutsu and the hishikarada, Honey Birdette has not been shy with referencing this before. This is the original shibari bra, which once again, I guess we can't really see it. I'll put in a picture. That is the hishikarada. That is the diamond tie. The bra also came out in white, and the white one has their signature sort of oriental crane pattern, which is really beautiful. And in my restoration video, I will be showing you how to retie it, because I did acquire the red shibari bra untied. So I'll be able to show you how to take it from this to the completed hishikarada. Anyway, back to the video, no cheating. In our beautiful, beautiful bra, this is where we see the Chantilly lace reference. Now, it did come in white and in black, but the references through time with Chantilly lace go on and on and on. Number one that comes to mind for me when I look at this bra is the Chanel 1995 dress. This one. Superstar of the time, Claudia Schiffer, would be seen wearing it that same year. At the 2011 Cannes Film Festival, she would be seen in a very similar dress by Dolce & Gabbana while wearing Chanel diamonds, which makes me think that they knew that Dolce & Gabbana was creating a very similar dress. Dua Lipa would go on to wear the original Chanel version in 2023 at the Met Gala before changing into the bridal dress by Karl Lagerfeld. And then Lily Rose Depp would be seen this year in a recreation by Chanel 2025. When I put the hishikarada next to the Chanel dress, next to Scarlette, I can't help but draw parallels and think that this is such an unbelievable reclamation of an ancient art that was used to subdue and harm women, turned into something beautiful, timeless, and reclaimed for our beauty and for our enjoyment, as well as referencing a gown that has been worn by so many women throughout history and has been part of a fashion conversation for decades now. If I wasn't certain that this was a reference to the Chanel dress before, the suspender that unfortunately is not here with us today is my final reason why. Of all the suspenders I've ever worn in my life, and I have worn many, the Charlotte suspender is the most durable and the one that is going to keep your stockings up the longest. And I know that sounds crazy. I still, to this day, I can't believe that I haven't found a suspender that's better, because it is so simple. It looks so delicate and light and not structurally supportive at all. But to this day, it's still the best. And the thing with the Charlotte suspender is that it is basically a little tutu. It's just this little like fluffy lace, just accoutrement to the waist. It's basically nothing. The underwear of Charlotte and that little clasp between the bra and the suspender is what makes it excellent. The suspender itself is just kind of there. Just like the Chanel dress. Just like the Chanel dress. It looks, oh my God, it's so beautiful, guys. I think it's so, so, so lovely. And combining the Hishikirata with this dress, all I see is Charlotte now. That's all I can see. And you can see how Honey Birdette has much more of a place in fashion culture than it was ever given. Now, the social commentary that Eloise was providing in 2016 with Vegas or Bust is incredibly fascinating, because though we were starting to see some insight into the reality of being a woman, the harshness and the violence was still not really something that was known. When we see these women speeding down the highway in this car, very, very scantily clad, two things come to mind that juxtapose one another. Either this is real life and these women are in exuberant amounts of danger. They're in the middle of nowhere. They have no clothes on. It's kind of a scary sight, honestly, though it's empowering and it's cool and it's sexy. If you think about it, it's actually pretty scary. Or are we looking at a fantasy? Are we looking at a fantasy world where women can dress however they want and never be in danger? Is Eloise proposing another way, another world, another plane of existence where we could look at these women, you know, playing around in the car and dancing and flicking their hair and, you know, not wearing very much? And is there a version of reality where they can do that and be safe? Does that place exist? I think Eloise and Honey Birdette always strive to make that place a reality. Importantly, I don't think that the lingerie in this scene was used to sexualize Thelma and Louise. I don't think that this was just, oh, Thelma and Louise are cool, put them in underwear, make them sexy, which honestly I think a lot of stuff does these days. Like I mentioned before, I think we really were seeing an amplification of the themes of Thelma and Louise in a way that Eloise could say Honey Birdette and Thelma and Louise stand for the same message, for the same ideas of freedom and rebellion and sovereignty and safety for women. Next up, we get to talk about Scarlette. Oh my goodness. The photos of the girls in this set. Oh my goodness. It maybe seems not that intense, but oh my goodness, does it look incredible on. Now, some references with this set. First of all, 1990s Gothic revival. We started to see so much red and black, with 90s references like Alexander McQueen, Dolce & Gabbana, Betsy Johnson. We have so many points in time where red and black was being celebrated on women, and goodness, is Scarlette a worthy contender. And what an incredible color combination it is. And I don't think we can really talk about women without talking about the color red. So I think this set is very aptly placed in the trailer. Scarlette is also a balconette bra. Balconette bras came into popularity in the 1950s, being worn by starlets like Marilyn Monroe and Brigitte Bardot. The idea was that without padding, we could elevate the bust and make a really, really beautiful, beautiful thing happen. And Marilyn Monroe's own white balconette bra was auctioned off for $20,000. I think choosing to include something Gothic was really, really important. We're going back to really hundreds and hundreds of years ago with our references to women, and the Gothic era and all of the iterations that have come from that is such a beautiful part of saying that women do naturally come with a darkness. There is so much danger and violence and pain and difficulty to being a woman, and no matter how much that pervades in our life, it will always come back to something beautiful, and it will always be reclaimed for us. And I think we see that particularly with the Hishikirata reference in Charlotte. Time and time again, women have refused to be destroyed by these things that were designed to destroy them, and that darkness and heaviness should be carried with us, not as a shadow, but as the truth. It's a beautiful thing what we are able to endure and still make beautiful. And I don't think that should be hidden. It was also the beginning of when we started to see this incredible metallic lace I remember at the time I really went around looking at other brands trying to find this. Granted, I'm from Australia, it's quite limited, but this foiled lace, wow, was it innovative at the time, and did it elevate the sets. It's not necessary, and I don't think any sets prior were missing without it, but the fact that they were able to make this so shiny, so metallic, so iridescent, so magical, when lace has been around forever, they found a way to make it even more beautiful. Honey Birdette is awesome. I'm such a fan. Can you tell? And before we move on to the analysis, Scarlette also has a little bit of Honey Birdette history, because the Mistress and the Madam sets, which came out very, very early on in the brand's history, they feature these little diamante silk strands that's become somewhat of a motif of the brand. You see it in different places on different sets, and even here on the Luna white and black sets, we see them again. It's one of the motifs of the brand, and Scarlette is able to encompass Honey Birdette's own history, the Balconette history, Marilyn Monroe, Brigitte Bardot, all these amazing women through history, Gothic history, Gothic revival, cutting edge design with the foiling and the lace, all in one lingerie set. In the trailer, this is when we start to see our girls working under the hood of our car. Not really something that ladies should be doing, is it? Which brings me into the theme that I see in this section of the video, which is the outlaw woman, and how easy it is to be a bad woman and to be seen as a bad, selfish, terrible woman. In Thelma and Louise, protecting one of the girls from assault was what made them outlaws. That's what made them have to do all of these extreme things that the movie follows. Somebody else's crime, somebody else's violence that they refuse to wear. Being a woman and refusing to be harmed by those around us does kind of make us a bad woman. It's seen as something that we are just supposed to endure. In the same breath, being a lesbian, the intense hatred from men towards lesbians because of what it symbolizes to them about them not being good enough or what have you, has been a key part of sapphic culture. When Vegas or Bust was released, gay marriage was still not legal in Australia, and so the idea of a lesbian being an outlaw is actually very, very relevant, and the ties to Thelma and Louise, where we see our two main characters who could be romantically involved, might not. Same with Thelma and Louise being such a queer, iconic film, but not necessarily forwardly saying that. That makes you bad. That makes you outside of the law. You're not even included in it. And even in some cases, you might face trouble for being outside of it. The pushback against Honey Birdette is almost one of the biggest themes that I see when it comes to Thelma and Louise and Honey Birdette and Vegas or Bust. In Thelma and Louise, the woman who was harmed protects the woman who is to be harmed. And together they go on a journey to live outside of that harm, no matter what it looks like. No matter what is done to them, and even in the ending, what it does to them, they committed to taking whatever was to come in order to say, no, we've had enough. And I believe that that's what Eloise was doing with Honey Birdette for us. I believe that Eloise was the woman who had lived in a world that was hostile to her, in a world that tried to convert her to normal, tried to harm her into normal, tried to belittle her into being less. And she stood 10 toes on business, even though Australian society treated her incredibly poorly. She took that sacrifice and she said, no matter what comes my way, no matter what happens, I will say this, and I will show this, and I will reference fashion throughout history and women's experience throughout history, and I will embed it in garments, and I will give them to women, and I will let them know that you deserve to be free and loved and safe and beautiful, no matter what happens to me, no matter what has already happened to me. I believe that Honey Birdette is that Thelma stepping in and saying, no, this has already happened to me. You're not going to do it to them too. Alrighty, now Miss V is one of my absolute favorites. The black and gold details call back to a lot of 90s Chanel and Versace designs from Chanel in 1991 and 1992. This 1992 Versace campaign, and Miss Naomi Campbell on the runway for Versace in 1992 again. I think that one particularly, you can really see some influence in the sort of harness design, and Donatella Versace herself wore cage design harnesses. One of the features of Miss V that I'm not able to show you on Violet is this amazing tiered suspender. Designers like Terry Mugler often really emphasize that stocking band and the connection to the suspender, and while not the first brand to do these tiered suspenders, brands like Birdette had done it in the early 2000s. Amazing emphasis of the stocking and actually creating a second line, drawing even more attention to that thigh area. Amazing neck piece, which, as we can see on our model, was advertised to be worn just on its own. And I actually wore the Miss V harness for many, many years as a cocktail bartender in Melbourne City. So it's incredibly versatile, and very few people think it's strange. It's just seen as a cool accessory. This V-set's also amazing because at this point in the brand's history, the way that I took this release was that they wanted to release a plain strapless bra and plain underwear, but they weren't able to, because it was just hit after hit after hit. And could you imagine if we took away all this harnessing and it was just a black satin panty, a black suspender, and a black bra? It would be nice, sure, but it would be really confusing in the grand scheme of especially Vegas or Bust and the brand itself. So what we got with Miss V was this amazing, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7-piece set where everything you see here can be altered. This harness can come off entirely so that it's just the satin bra, and I'll show you here. There's a beautiful satin and velvet. The lace raised is actually velvet. It's so nice when you touch it. And the lines are incredibly clean, incredibly beautiful, and balconette designed as well. The harness can be removed and this underlying band can stay, or it can come off altogether and you'll just have this simple, beautiful bra. The suspender, you can take this off and wear it just as a belt, which is really cool. And then you can also take off the thigh cuffs or the tiers and make it just a straight clip suspender. And then with the underwear, this belt elastic section comes off and you can wear just the panty, which has these amazing details on the side that call back to some other Honey Birdette motifs that are quite military inspired. And so I think this is a lovely, and oh my goodness, is it flattering. This is one of the most comfortable and flattering, if not the most comfortable and flattering panty that they've ever made. The gold hardware and the buckles and the shapes, all of the hardware up here says Honey Birdette. It's all custom, it's all thought out, it's all beautiful. And I think this design in particular really, really calls to the dominatrix, who, once again, designers like Terry Mugler used as a muse for a very long time, and I think is incredibly culturally relevant, not just because in a discussion about queer culture, the female BDSM experience is really not explored or publicized. We know a lot about what gay men do in their kinky little rendezvous, but BDSM culture in sapphic communities is really kind of unknown to us, and the dominatrix is probably the closest figure we have to an insight there. And the dominatrix wasn't just an iteration of a queer woman. Straight women and gay women alike have been going into dominatrix work for decades and decades and hundreds of years. And I think it's fascinating because for sapphic women who were being told, you know, oh, if you just be with a man, you'll like it, or, you know, you'll change your mind, or what have you. Society where you were forced to have a husband. And then even when this video came out, women couldn't get married. So if you wanted to be a wife, you had to have a husband. I think the dominatrix is an incredible figure of female power and starts an interesting conversation about female masculinity, because female masculinity and masculinity in general is seen as synonymous with manly. And when this set came out, I think a lot of people immediately thought, oh, you must be a dominatrix, you must be super dominant, you must be super aggressive. I think it's really interesting when you start to look at female strength and not just calling it feminine strength, identifying that there is masculinity to being a woman and there is a masculinity that is necessary to survive as a woman. By this point in our Vegas or Bust trailer, our girls have noticed that the car is just not going to get going and they have hit the road. They're wearing heels and lingerie and they're going to walk wherever they're going. And I think culturally, this is where women were starting to get to, especially in the 2010s. They were starting to reach a point where they said, you are going to do what you like to us. We have tried behaving and you still harm us. Thelma and Louise is a perfect mirror of this message, because Thelma and Louise were the perfect little housewives and they were harmed and then hunted to their inevitable end to no fault of their own. And so Vegas or Bust, more than anything, by putting our Thelma and Louise in lingerie states that we will be harmed if you harm us, not because of what we're doing. Our car's broken down. We felt like wearing this today. It's all good. We're going to walk. And if you harm us, you would have harmed us no matter what we were wearing, no matter what we were doing. So we don't need to play by this game anymore. We've realized it's a completely rigged game. And this image of the girls walking down the road also paints another reference to Honey Birdette and Eloise's image for what life as a woman could be. And particularly in this idea, female solidarity, be that romantic or just female friendships, it started to paint this picture that as long as we're together, it will be okay. As we start to get to the end of our trailer and our minds start to go towards the end of Thelma and Louise, the same message is there. This idea that even if it is the end, we're together and there's power in that. And Honey Birdette would constantly come back to this idea, and I think Vegas or Bust encapsulates it too. And in speaking of the ending, I can't help but draw the parallel between Thelma and Louise and Honey Birdette in their end. At the end of Thelma and Louise, our characters are forced to make a final decision, a final choice. If the world is going to stay broken, what do we do? What is right for us? And the choice that they made in the end was quite destructive, and it was the end. It was one final choice. And this mirrors, in my opinion, Honey Birdette being sold to Playboy Company. I believe that Eloise got to that cliff's edge and thought, nobody wants me here. Nobody really values what I'm doing. What do I do? What is the last choice I can make when the world is against me? And yes, she could have just closed up shop, but I think it was almost more disastrous to keep it open and sell it to Playboy. And I think that's a death on a completely different level than a real one, where the brand just disappeared. And I think Thelma and Louise and Eloise from Honey Birdette all had to make a decision where their freedom and their beliefs led to such a disastrous outcome because of the forces that existed outside of themselves, that a final decision had to be made, and it had to be severe. And it was. And now there's only 2 Honey Birdettes left in Melbourne when there used to be, 10. And it's owned by a company that has done nothing but harm women throughout history, whatever your opinion is of that. I think Miss V is the figure of fashion culture, women's history, sapphic visibility, beauty, strength, sovereignty, everything that Honey Birdette stood for. Now, certainly a sad sight, I do not have any of the pieces of Cristina. And believe me, I am just as devastated as you are, because I was in an auction for one of her pieces and I lost out. So, yeah. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for sitting with me while I talk about something that I love so much. I think that this is so important. And if there's anything that you've seen that resonates with you, or that maybe that I've missed, or just a fashion reference that you love too, please comment below, give us a little bit of encouragement and just some more history, some more juice to the channel, because it's not just about what I experienced, it's about what Honey Birdette created, and it didn't just create that for me. Now, Cristina, oh my goodness, probably the most camp theatrical set of the trailer. I have been so excited to talk about this one. Upon first glance, the neckline of the bra is really, really interesting, isn't it? It really calls back to those Victorian Edwardian necklines of the 1830s through to the 1910s. What I find interesting is that the neckline in particular is for daywear and for grieving. The nightwear was that sort of off-the-shoulder, beautiful, boobylicious design. And what Eloise chose by doing this high neckline and then adding the chest exposed is something that other designers have done too. This 2006 Ellie Saab runway show has a few examples of necklines very similar to Cristina, where we see this sort of symbol being made out of this neckline to represent women in their day-to-day lives or in our grief, not in our perfection. And so does Vegas or Bust. It's not about perfect women. It's not about dolls. It's not about being dressed up. It's about being a woman. It's about what the day-to-day of that looks like, what our history looks like, what it looks like to us to experience life. In 1993, Versace did something very similar, though slightly more exposed, where we see this callback to high modesty with this huge cutout that says, no, we're not going backwards, but we are referencing what came before for a very important reason, and because it's ours, because it's important, because it was beautiful, and it still is, and we carry that forward with us. Oh my goodness, and we can't forget 2001 Moulin Rouge. Tentery diamonds live rent-free in my mind at a whopping 134 carats of diamonds. And in the film, this necklace and this high, tight neckline, we see the opposite to the bra, right? Instead of having the cutouts on the sides and then this bit being empty, we see the very, very high neckline and then this bit's actually filled in. And in the film, the necklace very much represents a collar and submission unwillingly. It represents unwilling restraint, unwilling submission, just this kind of perverted ownership of the woman. And so we see throughout time this callback to this neckline. And what was done in Vegas or Bust was this decision to reference women's history again and to make it beautiful and to not include anything that evokes that sort of restraint and that disgusting imposition that unfortunately is also part of women's history, but to say, let me give this back to you in a way that's beautiful and in a way that is for you. Because the whole idea isn't that it's a perfect bra and it looks amazing and you can wear it every day. It's a fashion item. You know, the neckline couldn't be detached like in Miss V. Buying this bra was a commitment to wearing it the way that it is. Much like it is with women, we don't get a choice in the fact that our history is our history, but we continue to make it beautiful. The combination with the vibrant blue is incredibly relevant as well. It's 1999 Mugler runway, and all throughout the 2000s, honestly, we started to see these really intensely bright blues. And in the 2010s, we really took that to some extremes that were not so attractive, in my opinion. I think I'll leave out the references for that one. I think even further, this emphasizes this idea of light and dark and pain and beauty being carried forward together, not with one as wrong and one as right, but as one and the same almost. Almost akin to that concept of enantiodromia, where at the edge of everything dark, there will be light, and at the edge of everything light, there will be dark. Eloise wasn't trying to create a fantasy world away from the reality of what it is to be a woman. She was creating a beautiful world rooted in what it is to be a woman. And by combining this really dark gothic neckline, and because it is black, it is more akin to the morning dresses than the day wear. Then putting in that vibrant blue, it says, no, this isn't the gothic set. Scarlette was the gothic set. This just happens to have a gothic neckline and then this incredibly modern bright blue. And this combination of maybe something heavy and maybe akin to something incredibly restrictive. And then this brightness, you know, the sea, the sky, life, water, which is very feminine, all combined. And I don't think this bra brings across the feeling of mourning or gothic energy. It's down to that blue, the choice to make it that incredibly blue, this almost kitsch blue. It says, no, there's life here. Even though this might be a symbol of death sometime, some point in history, even if to be a woman is somewhat to symbolize death and destruction, that's not what I'm saying being a woman is. I'm just carrying that with us. And every piece says that. Every piece is rooted in where we came from and where we're going. And that is why Vegas or Bust is so important. And the next theme, the next and final theme, I think embeds nothing more but cultural meaning and purpose and love. If you ever doubted that Eloise loved Honey Birdette and those who took part in Honey Birdette, I believe the next chapter will convince you. Now, in any art analysis, it's important to talk about what isn't there as much as what is there, especially when we're using icons like Thelma and Louise. I'm going to need to dance around guidelines a little bit here for wording, so bear with me, but I'll put some text on the screen to help. There are two incredibly important themes missing from Vegas or Bust. This iconic scene from Thelma and Louise and the tool of attention of that scene, and the final choice made at the end. Very well could have been there, and they weren't. And they weren't for a very, very good reason. A reason that paints a picture of why I believe Honey Birdette is so culturally important, because our memories are embedded in this, whether we know it or not. Redacted theme number 1. Eloise very, very easily could have included this in Vegas or Bust. It would have called back to Thelma and Louise even more. It would have aided in that idea of women's empowerment even more. It would have made them look even more tough, and especially in the 2010s, we were still sort of in that absurd shock culture, so it would have been pretty jarring to see two women in lingerie wielding a weapon. Why do you think Eloise didn't do that? When Eloise was about 16 or 17, it was 1996, and Australia's history around was changed forever. The Port Arthur changed Australia's relationship with irreparably, and we as a country responded by taking them almost entirely away. And the laws around those who did hold these weapons were incredibly strict. One in particular that jumps to mind is if you do have a gun safe, it has to be concreted to the ground and it has to be locked at all times. And if it isn't, there's no insurance and you are completely liable for anything that happens to those guns that causes harm. I don't want to go too far into detail, but the Port Arthur event was enormous in Australian history, and Eloise would have been in her teens when that enormous change happened. In 2012, the Sandy Hook massacre occurred and reached even to schools in Australia, where we were being taught about what was happening in schools in America and the devastation that was coming from it. And then again in 2016, June, just 2 months before this video was set to come out, the Pulse nightclub shook the LGBT community and reminded especially Australians who were still fighting for marriage equality that they were not welcome by a lot of very, very aggressive people. Eloise could have made her characters look cool. Eloise could have called back to Thelma and Louise more. Eloise could have done all of these things. She could have been just another person using them as just like a throwaway symbol. And she didn't. She chose to empower these women, not with more violence, not with more bloodshed, not with more death. And I believe that she did that consciously, and I believe that it's a testament to her love for the community that she was trying to contribute to, as well as all of our history experiencing these horrible things around us. And the same goes for our finale. It would have been quite grand, wouldn't it? Little off a cliff for a lingerie trailer. That's pretty full on. In 2016, the conversation around mental health was really just beginning. We had started to push out of this idea that mentally ill people were just lazy and making excuses, or that PTSD was only for those who had been to war. But we were still really boxed into only being allowed to have, like I said, PTSD if you were a soldier, depression, or anxiety. They were kind of the three mental illnesses alongside schizophrenia. And when we look at punk music, emo music, the massive emo culture that was the 2000s and the 2010s, so many of our young people and upcoming artists and our communities in general were starting to find themselves in a position where they thought that there was only one way out. And Eloise chose not to exploit that. I truly believe that. I believe that she looked around and said, do we really need another force telling us that when things get really, really bad, we need to no longer be here? And, you know, maybe that's also relevant to what we were discussing with the sale to Playboy instead of just closing. Maybe even when the last bell is about to ring, Eloise still had that hope that there was a decision we could make a decision we could make to make things different, and that maybe things didn't have to just end. Maybe things didn't have to just be horrible and then be over. I think everything that she created, everything that we've gone through today, it shows an immense amount of love that, I don't know, it might seem silly and it might seem like I'm reading into it too much, but she chose not to include these incredibly relevant icons and images for a reason. And the culture around what was happening in 2016 and what she'd experienced in her lifetime being Australian, being lesbian, being alive at the turn of feminism in the modern day. She didn't want to tell you guys to just end it. She didn't want to tell you guys to attack each other. She didn't want to tell you guys that it had to be horrible. She wanted something else. And that's what art does. It says something. And though we might not think of lingerie and lingerie trailers as art, I do. I definitely do. I think that this trailer is deeply embedded with meaning and importance and love. So much love. So much fashion history, so much of women's history, so much Australian history, so much queer history. Honey Birdette is an homage to everything it takes to be that. And for all of us to still be here, and for me to be here 9 years since the trailer came out, you know, digging up bones and finding all of this love that was just encapsulated in this lingerie. And when you compare that to how most people see lingerie, and especially how a lot of like nasty people see lingerie, and how lingerie is used to be nasty, this couldn't be further from that. And that is everything to me. I think that's what is important in life. In general, if I was to support an artist, if I was to support a movement, I need it to be rooted in love and history and respect. And that's why I made this video. And that's why I've worked on this for the last 2 months. That's why my channel exists at all. That's why this archive will never die until I do. And even then, you know, the internet's forever, right? This will outlive me now. And maybe it stays with you. And then maybe you tell somebody and they watch this and then it's with them. And then maybe we don't forget. Wouldn't that be nice? Thank you so incredibly dearly for watching this video, for going on this journey with me. Yeah, everything I am loves this and loves being able to put it here forever and immortalize it all and talk about just what I saw, the amazing thing that I saw in the 2010s before Honey Birdette was taken away. Thank you so much. I would love if you would like and subscribe and tell YouTube that I made a good video. And if there's any thoughts that you have, I would love for you to comment and let me know. Yeah, I couldn't be more grateful that this is done and alive and in the world. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.